and welcome to our second session this morning that will be focusing on finding ways to maximize student engagement in the post-pandemic campus. And we are 142 participants strong in this event. To start off, he graduated from Christ the King Mission Seminary with a degree in AD Classical Philosophy. He has been conducting seminars that are relevant for student learning in the midst of pandemic. Aside from this, he reiterates the importance of work attitude and values one should have for classroom teaching. He is the member of ATPAS and board member of CATPA in Cavite. Currently, he is the Assistant Director, Office Student Affairs and Services of San Sebastian College Chocolates de Cavite since 2005. Let us all give a virtual clap of applause for Mr. Reynaldo Geronimo.
Thank you very much, Ma'am Tricia Bell, for that introduction. And good morning to all of you. Then my name is Mr. Geronimo. I am from San Sebastian College, Recoletos de Cavite. And I was tasked to share with you the topic on maximizing student engagement in the post-pandemic campus. There are three things that we have to look into here, no? Student engagement, maximizing it, and in the post-pandemic campus. We are assuming, of course, that we are already in the post-pandemic period, pero sa katotohanan lang, we are still at the midst of it. The virus is mutating, as you may have heard in the news, the most recent last night, the XBB and the XBC. Medyo just as when we are, relatively calm about the virus, it is mutating and it's spreading quickly at regions 11 and 6. My topic is maximizing student engagement. Student engagement has been there since time immemorial. Not really since time immemorial, but since the 1800s. The concept was originally from John Dewey. From then on, since the 1800s, we have been using student engagement in most of the things that we do. But and that was during the pre-pandemic. The pandemic period has challenged this idea of student engagement so much, okay, that we have to reassess how engaged we actually are and how engaged our students are. And the one thing for sure, this pandemic is going to be here and it's going to be with us for the longest time possible. For the longest time until a perfect cure has been made for it. Meanwhile, we have to live with it. Okay, let me just share with you my screen. Wait for a while. This is the one. Okay. Can everyone see my screen right now?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Tingnan muna natin to before we start.
Kung sino yung nagtatanong siya ang natututo.
Opo, ibig sabihin merong curiosity sa isip nila.
So, pag nag-aaral ka, tanong kayo ng tanong, so kayo ang natututo.
Ay, ang tawag po dyan, assessment.
Assessment. Pagkatama yung tanong sa amin tungkol sa lesson, hindi ho ba kayo nag-aral?
Yun po ay sinusukat kung ano na ang prior knowledge nila sa mga bagay na handa natin siguro sa araw na yun.
Sukat mo ang prior. So, kung kailangan namin i-nurture, ba't nyo kami turuan? Ba't kami ang nagsasabi ng tamang sagot?
Pag nalaman niyo, pag nasabi niyo po ang tamang sagot, ibig sabihin po kami naging epektibo sa pagtuturo.
Now, has everyone seen this TikTok? I'm sure sa mga pag-scroll nyo na-encounter nyo itong TikTok item na to, whatever you call it, no? Pero I was amazed at how wise, ganda, and this particular teacher exchange their views. This is one example of engagement. Both ways, students engage with teachers. Let us listen to it again. Huh?
Hello, sir. Hindi yata naka-share yung audio.
All right? Ulitin natin.
So, pag nag-aaral kami, tanong kayo ng
Hello, sir. Wala pa po. Ayan.
Wala pa rin.
Yung tawag po dyan, assessment.
assessment. At ang dami yung tanong sa amin tungkol sa lesson. Hindi ho ba kayo nag Kung sino yung nagtatanong siya ang natuto.
Opo, ibig sabihin merong
curiosity
sa isip nila.
So, pag nag-aaral kami, tanong kayo ng tanong. Pag nag-aaral kami, tanong kayo ng tanong. So,
Yung
kayo
tawag
ang
po dyan,
natuto.
assessment. Yung tawag po dyan, assessment.
Assessment. Ang dami yung tanong sa amin tungkol sa lesson. Hindi ho ba kayo nag-aaral?
Yun po ay sinusukat kung ano na prior knowledge nila sa araw na yun.
Prior knowledge. So, kung may prior knowledge kami, so mag-enroll pa kami, alam na pala na.
Ay, meron po tayong mga knowledge na dapat pang-nurture.
Kailangan namin i-nurture. Ba't din nyo kami turuan? Ba't kami yung nagsasabi ng tao? Kailangan namin i-nurture. Ba't din nyo kami
Nalaman niyo
turuan?
po, nasabi niyo po ang tamang sagot, ibig sabihin po kami naging epektibo sa pagtuturo.
Nasabi niyo po ang tamang sagot, ibig sabihin po kami naging epektibo sa pagtuturo.
Okay? Narinig po ba ng lahat yung exchange between the two?
Yes po, sir.
Okay, very good. Thank you. This is one example of engagement. Both ways, both ways. For the longest time, we have been seeing a lot of teachers engaged in the delivery of knowledge in the classroom. During the pandemic period, ang dami niyang mga na-upload, no? Ang daming na-upload, especially sa public school system. Mga teachers have been so energetic, no, in giving out all their best for a certain topic that they are handling. But the question is, how is it on the part of the students? How students are engaged is a different matter, because we know very well from our way back when we were just starting our courses in education, it has got to be in both ways, in both both ways, that the students and the teachers are engaged with what they are doing in class. For a context, we are just one of the 123 countries affected by the pandemic worldwide. Worldwide, this is according to the World Health Organization. And until now, the World Health Organization has not yet declared pandemic, COVID-19 pandemic, as free. We are all free to do whatever we want to do. We are still being held with so much caution on this particular health crisis. Now, because of the pandemic, we shifted immediately to online learning. Mabilisan. Lahat tayo naka-experience nito without knowing its impact, without knowing its economics, without a decent technological aid. without knowing its effect in the psyche, both of the students and of the teachers, both private and public. Educational institutions were immersed in the labyrinth of online learning and had been at the mercy of technology or whatever was available at that time. Natatandaan niyo po ba yung mga panahon na talagang nagkukumahog tayo pare-pareho on how we're going to be able to deliver our lessons? Thanks for the likes of Cerebro, who's providing us with the necessary tool for what we are supposed to do in class. One of the many researches on the effects of the pandemic was done sometime in 2022, the middle of 2022. It was done under the auspices of the American Red Cross through the Philippine National Red Cross. In this survey, 1,879 students were asked about the effect of the pandemic to them. 1/4 reported to have moderate to severe anxiety. 1/6 moderate to severe depression. So those are big numbers to think about. Okay, has this been just in the 2020 at the middle of the pandemic? No, unfortunately, this has gone over to 2021, 2022. And there are still remnants as of today of students who are actually experiencing either moderate to severe anxiety or moderate and severe depression. Now, for a background, I am also in charge of the discipline of students here at San Sebastian College, Recoletos de Cavite, from grade school to college. Believe me, the cases that we are having right now are quite unusual. Okay, more on that later. Now, this was caused by social isolation. The individual fear of being contained, of catching the virus, anxiety, uncertainty, chronic stress, and economic difficulties. And it has come to the point of an increased suicidal risk. Early on in our face-to-face class, we already had about 1 to 3 cases of suicidal attempts. No? The silver lining, though, is that the study also yielded result identifying social support builds resilience, identifies resilience as the stronghold against depression, anxiety, and stress. At this time, the RGC, the counselors are, working twice as hard, thrice as hard as they were before in accommodating students who are, undergoing this much of fear, of anxiety, of depression. But in the end of it, it is also identified that resilience was the stronghold against all this. Now, therefore, given the protective effects of social support on the psychological health and supportive environment should also be maintained in the classroom. Online learning must be perceived as an inclusive community and a safe space for in-person transactions. These are questions for reflection, questions that we might want to answer on our own. What's up in your schools? How unusual are the discipline cases in your schools right now? Na-share ko lang sa presidente na one time. Itong mga cases na mabibigat that we have now at the early start of the school year. We used to have this in the pre-pandemic time. We used to have this at the end of the school year. But now we are having it at the start of the school year. I couldn't imagine how it's going to be by the end of the school year. So those among you here who are in charge of the discipline in school, especially mga administrators, how unusual are the disciplinary cases in your schools right now? How are you holding up with student activities? Are you back to normal? Are you holding up activities right now in the same way that you were holding it before? Kami sa Student Affairs and Services, we are trying to, as much as possible, bring back how we used to do it before. But there's always this caution, this caution on how to do things. That day we could just plan it out swiftly. Now we have to consider so many things. How have we been able to catch up after 2 years technology-wise? Were there changes since 2020 in our usage of technology? Have the school been able to adapt to what is available? Okay. At least in our school, we were able to adapt Cerebro. The services of Cerebro. Has equity been responded to by hybrid modalities? Kamusta po sa mga schools ninyo yung mga modalities na ginagamit? Meron bang, is it equitable for everyone? How ready are our school for the in-person arrangement? Soon it's going to be a full in-person arrangement. How ready are we? Okay, in terms of the technological infrastructure, how ready are we to accept all students inside the campus, inside the classroom? What are our student realities? And this is not just the student realities. This might as well be our own realities. Because of the prolonged isolation that we all experience, there had been, at least from the start till midway, inconsistent structure. The result had been personal trauma to some of our students. Result, passive students, lesser sense of belonging, disengaged from learning, low motivation, and morale. Have you experienced this with your students, the ones that you are meeting in the classrooms right now? Have you had the time to actually compare how it was before and now? Actually, tatlo, pre-pandemic, during the pandemic, and now that we are slowly coming back. Have you actually seen some students you had before that now has become passive, now has had this lesser sense of belonging, and has now been a bit disengaged from learning, or has motivation and low morale? These are the students that we have to really, really take notice of. What? Okay. We have to answer this question: how to pick up from where we left off? How to pick up from where we left off? We wanted to go back as much as possible to the same path, to the same way we are doing things, but we are kind of tied up. We are, limited by what we have right now. But we have to acknowledge that there is a need for us to re-engage our students, and not just the teachers, but we have to re-engage our students in almost equal measure and re-engineer our pedagogical approaches, particularly in the modality that we are using. Re-engagement and re-engineering of our approaches has been so much called for at this time. Marami nang hindi uso doon sa mga approaches natin. The things that we've learned before, especially yung mga kaedad ko, mga 55 years old and above, na nagtuturo ngayon. Kailangan na talaga nating refresh ang sarili natin. This particular talk is a refreshment on student engagement, something that we need to do. Thanks to the likes of Cerebro who thought of this, kailangan nating tingnan ang ating approaches in the classroom with a fresh perspective. Okay. Teachers must find new ways to motivate and engage their students. Understanding the definition of student engagement allows the benefit of more engaged students. I'm sure you do recall how student engagement was defined when we were still in college. As a backgrounder, I teach principles of education, history of education, social dimensions of education, the teaching profession, and classroom management for ABCOM and for Psych. No, so this is just what we may call a review, but this comes in a very opportune time that we have to review all this. So what is the definition of student engagement is very important for us to take note of. Understanding the definition of students engagement, knowing the benefits of more engaged students and the different types of students engagement. Okay, let me just put it up. The amount of attention, interest, curiosity, and positive emotional connection that students when they are learning, whether in classroom or on their own. This is the standard definition of student engagement, the amount of attention, interest, and curiosity, and positive emotional connections that students have when they are learning, whether in the classroom or on their own. Perhaps John Dewey has already seen the onslaught of pandemic that he actually included the phrase, whether in the classroom or on their own. Now, a neuroscientist by the name of David Sosa pointed out that engaged students would normally have more motivation to participate in class, would enjoy achieving their learning goals, persist through challenges in learning, and feel intrinsically motivated to gain new and deeper understanding of concepts. These are the four items identified by Dr. David Sosa that resulted into a student who are actually fully engaged in school. One of the main, why must we maximize student engagement, as the title of the talk implies? Why must we maximize student engagement? Because student engagement is associated with motivation. It is associated with skills and habits. It is associated with discovering the joy in learning, the determination of the students to learn, the curiosity for their career, and of course, the resilience. Okay? These are the things, these are the ideas that an engaged student in class would benefit, would have if they are actually into what we are doing in class. Now, you may recall these things, dimensions of student engagement. There are three dimensions of student engagement: behavioral engagement, emotional engagement, cognitive engagement. Now, behavioral, if you may recall, covers the participation of the students in class. The students' participation in lessons such as attendance and concentration levels, as well as their involvement in social aspects of learning, whether or not they are engaged with extracurricular activities. The second, emotional engagement, has something to do with the general morale, okay, of having stable mental health, so to speak. It covers the students' feelings, especially towards the subject or course that they are studying. their teachers, their peers, their overall academic experience, and whether or not they feel the lesson actually have value. Now, it's very important for students to realize, to accept that each lesson that we deliver has its particular value in life. Otherwise, there would be disconnect. Then, cognitive engagement, ownership level, and self-regulation. This covers students' motivation and investments in their own education. It also includes the extent to which they take ownership of their own learning, are able to self-regulate, and wish to pursue personal educational goals. Now, you'd be hearing ownership and autonomy and self-regulation quite a lot in this talk because now it has been brought about by the situation. Now, such breakdown highlights the limitation of using a short and simple definition for student engagement, as students can simultaneously be engaged in certain ways, but disengage in others. Medyo mahirap i-engage ng buong buo ang ating mga estudyante. Pero there are indicators when we are winning the cause. Full student engagement will require all three dimensions and not just behavioral, not just emotional, not just cognitive, but all the three combined. And EdTech, of course, supported by EdTech and effective feedback from teachers. Generally speaking, the concept of student engagement is predicated on the belief that learning improves when students are inquisitive, interested, and inspired. Do you recall the TikTok a while ago? Yung inquisitiveness of our students, sometimes we get wary of it. They are inquisitive of yung sense of inquiry from our students. Sometimes we are so, well, tired of it, no? Especially in an online class. We wanted to get on with our lesson. We want to deliver what we're supposed to do. We wanted to, finish all the content. And we fail to actually listen to the questions of the student that would matter most in the lessons that we are delivering. Yung natural inquisitiveness of our students has got to be satisfied. At least there should be a level that we could, stretch our patience in answering student queries, especially if the queries are legitimate concerns on the lessons that we are delivering. Yung kanina sa TikTok, no, how professional yung responses ng teacher kay Vice Ganda. Vice Ganda taking the part of a student. This makes the students more interested in our lesson. And this leads to students' inspiration. Kahit po sa college, maniwala po kayo, yung natawag nating makulit, hindi na po uso yun. Yung kakulitan ng mga estudyante natin, hindi na po usong i-label natin yung nakakulitan. Most of the time now, students ask questions because they think the question is relevant to their situation. Yung mga senior teachers sa atin, alam naman when students are being just smart Alex. And learning that tends to suffer when students, student engagement, improves when students are inquisitive, interested, and inspired, as opposed to students being bored, dispassionate, and disaffected, or otherwise totally disengaged, unaffected by what we are doing. Yung may mga teachers sa atin, no, sing and dance na sa classroom, wala pa ring dating sa mga estudyante. Yung bigay todo na, wala pa ring dating sa mga estudyante. What could be wrong in that aspect? Could it be possible that the teacher is so engrossed and engaged, but forgetting that the student has got to be in equal share of energy? What are the benefits of students' engagement? Engagement affects students' achievement, students' future, and it can potentially help close pandemic learning gaps. Okay, so this thing called student engagement, we've learned all of this, the definition and all the elements of the definition. We've gone through this when we were in college. We've gone through this when we were doing practice teaching. Okay, but as I said a while ago, this has taken an all new level, a new, more urgent level because of the pandemic. And student engagement right now can potentially help close the pandemic learning gaps. Ano ba yung pandemic learning gaps that we have? Hindi ba, if you may recall, sa DepEd, they reported that yung comprehension ng mga students ngayon mas mababa kaysa sa dati. Mas mababa na nga pre-pandemic. Nung dumating pa yung pandemic, mas bumababa. Bumaba pa. We are all aware that modules are being answered by their parents. We are all aware that some modules are being answered by their older brothers and sisters. No? And we are also aware that in some cases, online classes and examinations, ang daming cheating na naganap. I remember in the case here, no, in the case of one school that I know of, dumaming bigla ang honor students during the pandemic period. Ang tataas lahat ng grade. Bakit kaya? Another benefit of student engagement is that it affects students' achievement, provided that talagang they really work hard for that. And of course, if it affects the student achievement, it could also affect the student's future. Okay? Right. When we talk of student achievements, it has a direct impact on the student academic achievement progress. Okay. Now, there was a study that was done which involved 128 schools and 110,000 students. But this is not in the Philippines, this is in the United States. Students found that student engagement had a significant positive relationship with student academic achievements progress in math, reading, and all subjects combined, especially in sciences. Now, this was what we are referring to, even if we are not going to refer to a Western study of student achievement. We could just look at our situation right now and our realities in the Philippine educational system. The pandemic has brought about low, what do you call this? Yung capacity for comprehension from our students. Yung reading lang, but not understanding. Ayoko naman masyado ipagdiinan, no? Pero there are experiences among us here that kailangan talagang tutukan ang comprehension part ng ating mga estudyante. Students' future. Student engagement encourages skills and habits and that could lead to a better chance of success once they leave school. And third, help reverse pandemic learning gap. Ito yung tinutukoy po natin kanina na students who are engaged can excel in the core instructions and they are less likely to need academic intervention. Pag mababa ang pangangailangan for academic intervention, mas madali, maaluwan ang buhay natin, mga teachers. Now, types of student engagement. There are two. that I shall be mentioning here: the teacher-driven and the student-driven engagement. Okay. A teacher-driven engagement builds a strong teacher-student relationship by delivering high-energy lecture and by using interactive games. Now, yung naturally charismatic teachers often excel with these methods. Meron sa ating mga naturally gifted teachers na yung charisma nila sa students nila, ang taas ng level. Congratulations to all those teachers who have this natural gift of charisma. Some teachers do not have it, and so some teachers would struggle for such type, struggle or work hard for this kind of engagement. The other type of student engagement naman are student-driven engagement. The other side, creating challenges and learning tasks by giving students the roles and responsibilities, by providing collaborative tasks and structures for maximum engagement with peers. Now, what's the difference? This is just a review. Yung teacher-driven strategies are dependent on the teacher's experience level and personality. Di ko nga alam kung ano ang mas mabigat, kung yung experience level or yung personality. Or yung student-driven naman engagement strategies can be easily learned through hands-on experience when they are the ones to make choices, when they are given autonomy, when they are given the responsibility to self-regulate. Most school administrators could readily identify teachers, young teachers, newly graduates who has this natural gift for teaching. Could exude teachers who could actually exude everything that is written here. Okay? Yung natural charisma nila. Maswerte yung mga schools who have teachers who have a group of teachers who could actually inspire students. Look at their teachers and be inspired immediately. By the way they deliver lessons in class, or by the way they hold up to their being a teacher in the community. Now, as I said before, there is a need for us to re-engage and re-engineer student engagement. These are the points that we have to consider. Re-engaging our students would have to reserve more time for collaborative, active learning. The idea is to right size the lecture. All right, I'm sure you've heard about this before. Do not give everything up front. Students learn more by giving them the autonomy to make academic discoveries on their own. Sometimes there are those teachers who are so engrossed by giving the content and forgetting the idea that students could learn other concepts on their own. And it's not always welcome. It's not always right that we spoon feed our students with all the information, rather than making our students discover the information that they need to discover all by themselves. Next, another idea for engagement, that it gives our students real roles and responsibilities. Students can become more active when given structures for autonomy. Ito yung medyo nawala sa atin during the pandemic. Okay? Students can become more active, engaged participants in their own learning when they have structures for autonomy. In most classrooms, when students are working independently, the teacher's role is to support students by checking student works, answering student questions, and offering coaching and feedback. Instead, gradually empower students to self-check, self-track their own learning progress. Coach their peers and turn to each other and their resources to find answers to their question. In fact, it could even come to the point that let students grade their own work. It's not alien. It's not an alien approach to make the students grade their own work. If this is going to be part of their roles and responsibilities in the classroom. Create structures for students on their own work. For students to truly engage in their own learning, they must first understand what they are expected to learn. Without them understanding what they are expected to learn, it will just come out as a routine thing in the classroom. Learning targets describes the knowledge and skills students should be able to demonstrate by the end of the lesson. Learning targets, and we know all of this, are broken down into success criteria so students can self-assess and track their learning progress. Once students meet all the success criteria, either we design it for them or they design it for themselves, it means that they have achieved the learning target. Students can check off their success criteria as they work, which keeps them focused on their academic task. Self-reflecting on their own progress also helps students learn concepts more deeply. Next, monitor student engagement and make adjustments. Using a system or tool to measure student engagement and make adjustments accordingly. I used to do this in my class. I ask for something, I ask for a project. No, I see to it that I return it to them with my criticism or with my notes or with my, what do you call this? With some ideas that they have to improve on. Return it to them and give them some more time to refine it, to check it, perfect it, and then they are again given the time to submit it. Minsan kasi, we put a deadline on the submission. Okay? We put a deadline on submission. And after that, the students would never have any more chance to redo their work according to what is being asked of them. Sometimes it is best to put a deadline, but in that deadline, students are given also the time. Before that deadline, students are given the time to refine their work. Okay? For them to make adjustments. Okay. This would make the students more involved in the process. And the learning targets and success criteria as indicator of engagement. Increase the rigor of academic tasks. Now, challenge the students. Push their thinking and harness their collective skills in their teams. Now, if they want to go further than what is expected from them, let them go further. Let them do a follow-up on their project. Okay, if they could do more than just what we are asking for, then let it be. So, para mas may appreciation sila noong gawa nila. Strategies for rebuilding student engagement in the post-pandemic. Reconnecting with students in the post-pandemic stage requires multiple strategies: dialogue, trust, and empathy. Now, yung empathy na yan, it couldn't be more truer now than it was before. The past 2 years have offered ample evidence of impact remote learning has had on students. Virtual education system kept schools running safely during the early days of the pandemic, reduced bullying in some cases, and gave many students a new sense of autonomy. But as we return now to the classrooms, other effects become more apparent. While remote, students miss hands-on learning opportunities and time to bond with peers, even with teachers. Teachers struggle to connect with at-risk students, and many of whom have difficulty focusing on their studies in unstable connections at home, even in schools. Across the board, students miss educational milestones, falling behind in math, reading, and sciences. We already know these facts. School administrators and teachers work diligently to adapt online learning practices. Still, some students had unreliable access to Wi-Fi, and not just students, also teachers. Okay? Others lost loved ones to COVID-19. At napakalaki ng impact nito among our learners. And many other teens pick up job to support their household. Ngayon lang nangyari, ngayon lang ako naka-encounter ng dami ng college students na working students at the same time. Ang dami kong na-encounter ng mga students ngayon, humihingi ng excuses because they are to render overtime and so they're going to be late. They cannot attend this meeting. Mga student leaders pa yung iba dyan, ha? Student leaders who cannot attend the meeting because they have a job. No, they took on part-time jobs. These circumstances worsen mental health outcomes and ultimately disengage students from their lessons. Student engagement is at the core of a successful outcomes in school, whether that be measured in test scores, emotional, socio-emotional development, or graduation rates. So how can educators meet students where they are? How can educators meet students where they are? What would be the crossroad? What would be our point of reference, both? How do we course correct after months of missed learning and opportunities and delays? How do we course correct or sometimes program correct what we have? Here are some suggestions to re-engage our students. First, encourage collaboration. Being back in the classroom means students reuniting with their peers. Rather than allow such socialization to distract from course materials, teachers can harness that energy. After time apart, group projects and paired learning opportunities serve the dual purpose, encouraging teamwork and re-establishing social norms. Okay? Encouraging collaboration encourages teamwork and re-establishing social norms at the same time. Next, prompt students to take ownership in planning a lesson, in delivering a lecture. Make room for student choices. Do not make students do reporting, all of them at, there are different phases of student learnings. Alam naman po natin yun. If some students would rather do the reporting in a different way, let them be. For as long as it is within the desired learning outcome. Okay? Rather than allow such, if the students need to demonstrate their grasp of how a lesson is to be learned, give them the space to learn it that way. Allowing students to make choices tells them educators and teachers care about their opinions. It also prompts self-assessment. Students will ask themselves which project they could actually excel at, which way they could present the project that would that would be more suitable to their skills, no, to their capacity. Student input offers them a sense of self-control. Young people want to be heard. They want to be listened to. Finding small ways to accept feedbacks and make changes could mean the difference between committed learner and one who is simply going through the motion. Definitely, we do not want students to just go through the motions in the classroom. We want students who are committed in their learning. This is very important. Infuse real-world impact into the lessons. Hindi ko ma-recall, no? Pero yung may mga lumalabas sa Facebook dati, if you may recall, may mga lumalabas sa mga test questions sa module na hindi na real-world situations. Walang real-world impact. I'm not going to critique on that one anymore. We want our classrooms to be a reliable space for students to learn and grow without outside stressors. Yung real world impact into the lesson is very much called for at this time and age. However, creating a safe environment is not the same as dismissing lived experiences. We cannot invalidate what students experienced during the pandemic and how best they could actually present their projects and their works and their tasks is a lot better than we impose onto them how they're supposed to do it. In fact, connecting student studies to their everyday lives often helps them see that they matter first and foremost. Offer sustained virtual opportunities. The pandemic continues to impact our students, but after quickly adapting to remote learning, educators learned new ways to stay in touch with students outside the classroom. Virtual learning shouldn't lapse because we are back, because online communication is crucial to sustain engagement. Hindi pa tapos ang pandemya, malayo pa ang umaga. Virtual opportunities, this learning management system, we would be needing this in the very near future. In fact, this is already the future that we are experiencing right now. How happy yung mga schools like De La Salle Sobel, how happy yung mga schools like Poveda Learning Center or Woodrose or Southridge schools na prior to the pandemic, they were already having online lessons. So ang dali ng shift nila. Well, unfortunately, not all private schools nor public school have that kind of infrastructure before the pandemic. And even during the pandemic, we do not have that, that same infrastructure, online technological infrastructure that are needed in the future. But we are looking into what? This year and the next 3 years na masisettle natin lahat yung pangangailangan natin sa technological infrastructure. Conduct engagements, check in, and communicate constantly. At the end of the day, the best way to measure engagement is to ask students directly. An anonymous online poll, it doesn't have to be anonymous, in fact. Okay, each week could provide insights into what is working in a particular lesson and what needs improvement. Now, we all have that GC, with our class. I'm sure, katulad nyo rin ako, na ang dami-daming GC, hindi ko na alam kung sino minsan yung kausap ko. Now, this group chats, may poll dyan. May poll. You could make use of the polls in the GC to measure the impact of the lesson for the day or to measure the impact of the lesson for the week. Design your poll in such a way that it could also be, it may, yung bang, hindi siya mag-a-appear as a quiz, but as a way to measure yung impact ng lesson that has been delivered for the day or for the entire week. Use that poll. Staying in touch with the students can make a variety of forms. Talking to the entire group of students while in class, and sending group or individual emails encouraging conversation or soliciting feedback via survey from students and their families. Now, in the kind of system that we are using sa LMS, even the parents, itong sa Cerebro, even the parents could be involved. And we never had this before prior to the pandemic. Ito yung maganda sa mga LMS, lalo na sa what Cerebro is offering us. Online breakout sessions that are structured for students to capture their thinking and share back in the main room with the teacher also offers opportunity for continued communication and provide the teacher with insight into what the students are grappling with. Naalala ko lang, no? Breakout session. Nag-breakout session, yung teacher nag-break din. Nag-take din ng break during the breakout session. The breakout room is to be maximized. Teachers has got to be present in these breakout sessions to monitor what is happening in these breakout sessions. Yung iba sa atin, pagka nag-breakout rooms, naka-break din. But ang kagandahan ng breakout rooms is that we could actually monitor each one of them and how they are doing. Yung bang presence natin, kahit virtual lang, yung presence natin, andoon pa rin sa bawat isa sa kanila. Explicitly teach students how to self-regulate. This is very important. We all know how difficult it is to avoid distractions. Students are no exception. Yet deeper learning environment helps students learn how to learn as well to how to self-regulate. Pag may mabigat yung part ng self-regulation for the students, the more they are going to be able to appreciate the learning better. Self-direction in schools is needed to increase confidence and independence among students. Now, the pandemic has called for shifts, a lot of shifts. There is a need for instructional shift. During the pandemic, students experienced instructional shift, social, future-oriented, and social-cultural shifts that impacted their motivation in a variety of ways. Instructional shifts include the use of new technology and assessment types, and a reduction in certain types of hands-on learning. Many students experience lower self-efficacy because they had fewer mastery experiences in online context, limited background in online learning, limited vicarious experiences, limited verbal encouragement, and increased anxiety. Shift in students' feelings of autonomy were mixed. Many students felt that they had less autonomy due to the sudden mandatory shift on online learning, and that tendencies of some instructors to be more controlling due to their personal feelings of stress and burnout. Di naman natin miaalis yun. Even teachers had the share of the feelings the students had gone through during the pandemic. At the same time, some students gained additional autonomy as instructors implemented asynchronous student-based learning options and more open-ended assessments, such as projects. Socially, students had less reliable access to peer and instructors, and many students faced mental health challenges. One study found out that regardless of student beliefs about the effectiveness of online learning, a lower sense of belonging led to a lower academic motivation. As I said a while ago, itong panahon ng pandemya na binubuno natin, ngayon natin mas kinakailangan ng services ng mga counselor or ng mga psycho-emotional support staff. Student perceptions of the future also shifted as they contemplated the bleak economic outlook. They gain new admiration for healthcare professionals or struggle to stay engaged with their current academic work. The uncertainty about the future made it harder to derive motivation from a sense of utility, value, or clear mastery of goals. Now, what this pandemic did was for the students to shift even their courses. Mas maraming sa reality namin dito sa Baste, tumaas ang aming enrollment sa nursing. Yung kakilala kong isang teacher dito rin sa Cavite na maraming program offerings sa linya ng medisina at ng sciences, tumaas din yung kanilang enrollment sa pharmacy, sa nursing. Okay? Halos ang daming estudyante, ang daming first year students na nag-i-enroll ngayon sa nursing, most especially. At marami rin kami mga estudyante nag-shift into nursing. While ABCom suffered the most. Ito yung naging result ng pandemya. Mas dumami yung mga estudyanteng interesado sa mga sciences-related courses and IT-related courses. Ito ngayon yung signs of the times for students to look into. Okay? Now, moving on rather, some students also worried about the cost of their higher education. Yung nga lang, medyo nagkaroon ng higher cost ang education right now. Nagkaroon ng additional payment that had to be, settled by the students. Okay. To promote feelings of autonomy among students, instructor should take care to give students meaningful choices about what they work on and how. The more ownership student can take, the more motivated they will be to learn. Constructive feedbacks can also motivate students, but instructors should be mindful of how they deliver feedback. Napaka-sensitive ng mga students natin ngayon, ano? Minsan the tone of our feedback matters most to our student than what we actually say. Ulitin ko yung part na yun because this was my experience just yesterday. The tone of our feedback matters more than the actual content of our feedback to some of our students. Napaka-sensitive nila ngayon. To effectively motivate students, instructors should de-emphasize competition and numerical grades in favor of mastery. Practices like allowing assignments revision can help students build competence and become more comfortable seeking and responding to feedback. Teachers must try to normalize challenges and growth. Make it clear to our students that struggling is common and feelings of belonging take time, especially now in this pandemic period. Concluding part, let us go back to the definition of student engagement as in reference to the glossary of educational reform. Ulitin natin yung simula where I started in this talk. Student engagement may also refer to the ways in which school leaders, educators, and other adults might engage students more fully in the governance and decision-making processes. I-break down natin into pieces. Elements in an engaged learning environment includes the school community, the adults in the schools, the students' peers, the instruction, and the curriculum. These are the 5 elements of student engagement that we must not forget. But the instruction, but we must take special care. Okay, as adults in the schools, we must take special care into monitoring intently students' participation and their peers, the instruction, and of course, the re-engineering of the curriculum. Why increase in student engagement? Or why does student engagement matter? Because according to one study, schools engagement is more than just talk. Okay? School engagement, student engagement results to twice the students getting excellent grades and 4 times likely to be hopeful about their future. Now, as teachers, wouldn't we want our students to be 4 times more hopeful of their future? Thank you very much.